3:02 in the afternoon on May the 19th. First item of business is to review and approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Those were sent out to everyone. Does anybody have any comments? Do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion. This is Billy.
Okay. Filberto moves. Second.
Second.
Joe Hurt seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Okay. Next item is remove from the table and discuss formulate written recommendations to the council on impact fees. This is our main task for the day. I know several of you have had.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I believe you'll need a motion to remove from the table.
I'm sorry, you're correct. A motion to remove from the table.
So moved.
Dr.
Second.
Jones, seconded by Withrow. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. All right. Now that we've got that, thank you, Michael.
No problem, John.
Let's open discussion and talk about what we're going to do to formulate our recommendation to the council. Mr. Withrow?
Do we need to all speak at one time, John?
You're next on the picture list up here, so I'm just going to go with you and go around the room, so to speak.
Well,
because I know we've had lots of people have had ideas and discussions and
right. Well, I have, I'm sure that we all know the city needs to really do something. I just don't know what's going to be the best way for us to come up with a formula that will still allow us to keep the housing situation moving forward and allow for the workforce housing that we may need in this community. And I have a concern about, I think the impact fee itself can be absorbed on larger homes, probably a little easier than it can be on the price range homes that our community needs and will need in the future as it continues to grow. So I'm not a scientist on how to do this, but we've kicked around various numbers, and we all know that this impact fee will be passed on to the consumer. And anytime you pass it on to the consumer in certain areas, that's going to create a little bit of a hardship, maybe on their mortgages and things like that. So I think that being said, I think that needs to be in our consideration as to any recommendation we make. And I'll turn the floor over to the next person.
Joe, I'm going to go to you. You're next in line on this. And I know you'd expressed some concerns about the disparity between the $200,000 house and a $2 million house. If both have the same size water meter, they're paying the same load, right?
Paying the same thing, and the variance between the water meters not very much anyway. And so, you can build a $2 million house, and the impact fee is the same as basically as if you build a $200,000 house. And
John Atkins, have y'all seen that in other places, or Jeff, that where the impact is probably, I know density wise, you've got a whole lot more $200,000 houses than you have, $800,000 or $1 million houses. But how has that been addressed in other communities?
Jeff, you can start.
Sure, I can start. I'm assuming you're mostly talking about the roadway side because the water and wastewater is different, but the roadway side, it's a little counterintuitive when you think about it. If you think about the workforce housing, I'll speak purely technical first. If you think about the workforce housing and the people who are buying into, we'll say a $200,000 home, a lot of times those are dual income working families, often with kids. So the traffic's at maybe retired or one parent working. So from a pure traffic standpoint, we see per unit that the smaller homes tend to general. From a technical standpoint, ITE doesn't distinguish between any size of homes. They say on average all the homes are about the same. But when we dug into in a few cases where we dug into it, I would call it workforce housing generates slightly more trips than maybe the higher end homes. So from a technical standpoint, my recommendation to committees are don't make this a technical decision, make this a policy decision where you decide to charge and this has not been done in Texas to my knowledge, but you charge a home, you charge a home X dollars. And if it meets certain criteria that further your goals, such as workforce housing, that you discount that amount for say a small home or whatever the field may be. So that you're treating all the homes the same, they're charging the same, but if some home meets certain criteria, you allow them to have a discount. That hasn't been done, but that would be my recommendation how to handle that if you're going to consider something rather than say one house is one rate and another house is another rate. They're just receiving kind of a discount, if you will.
John, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Sure, please.
And this is for Jeff or John. Can you, instead of what we're doing is on districts, and we can still do it within districts, but can we do it with the square footage instead of, in other words, if a house is going to be built and it's, say, 1,600 square foot, it has a number on it, and a house that's got 5,000 square foot has a different number on it. Is that?
Yeah,
sure.
Dr. Goetz,
Legal?
we would recommend not to use dollars. We would recommend using square footage because it would be closer to related to trips than dollars. And also when someone pulls a building permit, it's more maybe reliable. You can't change the square footage is a square footage. So we would prefer it to be a square footage number if we were given a recommendation towards your point.
Well, and that makes sense because the dollars are going to change in the 5 or 10 year period of this ordinance also.
So Jeff, you're saying something about like maybe charging $1 per square foot in a sense. I know that's not the right amount, but so a 5,000 square foot house would be $5,000 and a 1,600 square foot house could be $1,600.
I think I don't want to put a recommendation out there, but I think it's better.
I didn't either. I'm throwing a number out for understanding purposes.
I think what I would have the committee consider is charging a rate for a house, and then if it meets a certain square footage criteria or something like that, is to give them a discount. Which we're probably saying the same thing. Hey, a house is going to be $100, but if it's less than say 1,500 square feet, which I think it's $50 or something, it gets a 50%
Mr. Chairman?
discount.
Mr. Chairman, this is Michael. I want to see if I can understand kind of your thought process as it relates to the question. But you guys are advocating that, or rather, you guys are inquiring to whether or not a lesser fee could be charged for a smaller home as opposed to a larger home. That's the premise, correct?
That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so just kind of thinking about that question and really looking at it from a practical standpoint, you take a subdivision, let's take one of Jack Moose's. Jack used to build some pretty large houses, and certainly those are the ones that you would be targeting for a higher fee. But then you take someone like Beatonbow, who does a lot of smaller homes and does them in considerably higher density. The reality of that is that the impact is greater on a higher density subdivision than it would be on let's say, a house per acre type of development, is it not? I mean, you're looking at additional cars, you're looking at additional people, additional taps into the water or sewer line. I would venture to say that again, that the impact is greater on a smaller, more dense subdivision than it would be on a larger, more spread out subdivision.
And Michael, this is Mike. I agree with that, but I think a little bit of concerns that I have is the fact that that impact fee will probably determine the price of those houses and will affect some situations where, as long as I've been on various committees, we've always tried to, make houses as reasonable and affordable for workforce housing.
Yes, sir.
And so my concerns are we kind of contradicting ourselves by having something like that, even though we know that's going to be, you're probably correct on the cars and everything like that. So, that's something that I've been thinking about and concerned about.
Yes, sir.
And Michael, the impact fee is not going to be the answer to all of the city's financial needs anyway. I mean, I'm not trying to lessen that number, and I know you're looking at trying to maximize that number, and we certainly all understand that. But the impact fee is just one more tool. We're still going to have all the other ways that we've been doing stuff in the past.
That is correct, John. You're right. It's merely a tool to help offset cost. And you're right. I am specifically looking to see if there's all the opportunities of which impact fees are one of them, to raise additional revenue to get those projects done.
And one other thing go ahead, Mike.
Well, no, you're fine, John. Go ahead. I was just gonna ask about.
This impact fee is only gonna pay for about 10% of what we need. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't cover it all. No, Joe, not even close.
Well, my question too, then, Michael, is I know that I've talked to a couple people in Midland that, they have theirs. Well, a lot of their subdivisions are presently, if they're platted, they're presently grandfathered in. And so I don't know, after our discussions, I don't know where we would head on that, but let's just say that was the situation, because I think my personal opinion is we've got to stay very competitive with Midland in all aspects. But so we may not even be able to gain as much ground as we think we're going to gain if we've got a situation where a lot of these are grandfathered in as platted subdivisions.
Yeah, I'll look
That's
to
John.
Jeff or John to answer that, because I know they work directly. And not only that, Mike, I think they had a period of time, a grace period, if you will, before the fee actually went into effect. Jeff or John, can you kind of elaborate on what Midland did in their situation?
Sure. Midland, they enacted their impact fees pretty much right away. The effective date of the ordinance was right
Okay.
away. But if you were already platted, they did give a 2-year grace period for the platted lots. State law requires a 1-year grace period, but Midland did give a 2-year grace period for single family townhomes and duplexes if you were already platted.
Okay.
And Jeff, if you know off the top of your head, now that Midland has had their fee in place, I think to Mike or to Joe's point about just how much revenue can be generated. As an example, what did Midland generate in their first year, if you know that off the top of your head?
I unfortunately don't know that answer.
Okay, all right.
I do know that some of their developments on the single family side, they negotiated building some roadway infrastructure for credits towards those fees due. So a lot of their revenue generated was on negotiation side with getting roads built.
Gotcha.
Chris, Barry, do you have any thought on, or other communities you've seen about how it got implemented, whether platted lots at the time of implementation or anything?
I know in Lubbock, we specifically talked about some of what you and Mike were thinking of in terms of square footage. We looked at kind of drawing a line at 2,000 square feet. And then the builder discussion, everybody would magically maybe not have 2,000 or 2,100 square foot homes, but they'd be right at that 1999. And kind of who, I guess just based off the site plan at building inspection would go off the square footage there. And ultimately that kind of got squashed in terms of just trying to keep affordability. And that's when the SEAC committee just decided to do a flat impact fee and a discount across the board. But there was a lot of discussion about square footage.
But it got tabled, and so they are not.
They just went a
implemented?
different, they just did a flat discount across the board. They felt, there's a lot of work on the city side when you start to do the square footage, and Jeff may be able to hop in if I say something that's not accurate, but there seemed to be on the surface a lot of responsibility on the city to kind of manage that per square footage as building permits come in. So I think to try to keep things simple, they just were able to get a flat discount across the board. And, just a reminder, Lubbock did just roadway. And I know this conversation is encompassing roadway, water, and wastewater.
Yeah, Chris is right on that. There was a lot of debate on that, and I think the thought was always 100% charge for the larger homes and 50% charge for the, certain square footage. There was a lot of debate on that square footage, but ultimately they just decided to do the 50% rate on all residential, and that's what ended up passing. But there was a lot of discussion similar to what you were having here originally.
And Jeff, if I remember again, Lubbock only went with roadway because that was kind of their biggest need. A lot of the water and sewer was kind of already in place, right?
Yeah, when we did the existing conditions analysis, they were actually ahead on their water and sewer plan, but significantly behind on their roadway.
Got it.
Well, this discussion is great, but it's kind of antithesis as far as what, since 1990 that I served on the city council, that we've been trying to do, which has got workforce housing in here. If we're charging workforce housing the same prices we're charging some guys building a $2 or $3 million home, that makes no sense to me. Okay, if we discount it, that's great. We need to discount it, but we've got to figure out how to do that. That's why we were looking at in our mind a square footage. It doesn't have to be square footage. It can be a price, but a price is going to be the same thing. So explain to me, Jeff, how we do discounts that would be benevolent to workforce housing, because 50% doesn't match. It's still an onerous price for a home that we're trying to build for $150,000 or $170,000, which I know Chris can't build one for less than 200 and something thousand. So that makes no sense.
Hey, Dr. Coates, I got a quick question. Sorry. Can you do, Jeff, this is directed at you. Can you do it to where the lower end houses maybe are exempt from the tap fees, and then the upper end houses have to pay a tap fee or something like that? Is that a way of doing a discount or not?
I think that's a recommendation that could be considered as we write the ordinance. I think most of the time when we're discounting or waiving the fees, we always want to tie it back to goals, like in the ordinance of whereas waiving or discounting the tap fees for workforce housing below a certain square footage, certain dollar, whatever that terminology may be, furthers the initiative of the city to provide XYZ. So I think all things are on the table. We just have to get together and take your recommendation and take council's recommendation and be able to put it into a format and ordinance that's defensible. So I think
Hey, Mike,
Michael,
Mike, Jimmy, you guys have been around as long as I have as it relates to affordable housing. Are you guys concerned, is it the low-income housing, or is it low-income housing and what we've termed in the past as workforce housing that you guys are most concerned about?
Well, I guess I don't really know how we define low-end housing or affordable housing or any of that right now, with the cost of materials, the cost of land, the cost of infrastructure. And so I guess I have this feeling over here that we have an obligation to assist our public servants and our teachers and parties like that, but we're not really able to do that even in the present market without additional fees, because of all the cost of goods have gone up so much. So.
Yeah. Okay. I
If I,
Mike, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Jimmy, Mike, certainly I understand, I think your position that you're trying to keep those costs down. I'm wondering, that sounds like it's more of a policy type question or policy types issue. And maybe we need to think as the group, what would we, because we have to find a definition. And I get it, Mike, right now, costs are up all across the board. I want to hope that costs will moderate at some point. And given that we can implement this now and take a little time to actually get it in, I wonder if that gives us time for things to moderate. But I still get back to the point where we've got to, if that is in fact the biggest concern, workforce housing and low-income housing, I think the council would look to this group for some direction on how we best define that. Low-income housing, I think, is probably easier to define than it is for workforce housing. And that simply is housing that's available to persons earning less than 80% of median income. One of the things that we had contemplated at CIC committee was this idea of identifying where you typically have low-income persons residing and providing either an exception or a highly reduced impact fee in those areas. Jimmy, I'm talking specifically of the CDBG low-income areas as being kind of targeted areas, if you will, for the development of low-income housing, and by extension, providing, like I said, a much lower impact fee. I think that one's, I wouldn't say it's an easy one, but it's certainly a lot easier to define.
Michael, do you have that map that we talked about?
I sure do. Let me
Can you share that with us?
Yes, sir. Just give me 1 second.
Okay, this, guys and lady, this may be a step in that direction.
Committee, what you see on the screen right now is what is defined as the CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, low income targeted area. Jimmy, you'll remember from your city council days that this is where a lot of our CDBG dollars went, because these are the areas that are federally defined with a disproportionate or 50% or more persons earning less than 80% of median income. This consequently, gentlemen, is also the area in our community that has a higher disproportionate number of vacant lots as well. But they're going to be primarily South Odessa, Central, certainly parts of the West. We've got some out on the East. These are probably there, gentlemen, because of the apartment complex, not so much because there's availability of land or developable land. That, again, you're going to find primarily in Central and West part of the city. But this is, again, what we call the CDBG targeted area.
So just for one part of our recommendation, we could just say exempt any impact fees for anything in these CBDG areas, right?
I think you can consider an exemption, a total exemption, Mr. Chairman, or perhaps a highly reduced fee.
Okay, but that could be the first part of our recommendation, but then that still doesn't go to what Mike has been talking about the quote workforce housing, or the housing that is at the bottom end of the cost market right now, which, looking at all the current home builders, that's in the 200, 250, and that's what, 15, 16, 1700 feet. That's the way I was looking at that.
How about for the low income, 0 impact fees or 90% discount, and the 2,000 square foot and smaller homes, like a 75% discount? Just, I don't know if that's feasible.
So if we look at our neighbors to the east, I mean, and you guys have repeatedly said you want to be competitive. So in that equation, when we looked at the numbers the last time, and specifically when we looked at where we were in terms of fee based on the actual meter size that we use here in the city of Odessa, that made us pretty, I thought, very competitive. As a matter of fact, we were several $100s under Midland at that point. You guys think that should be further discounted?
Well, I mean, I've done a little bit of research on the difference in ad valorem taxes compared to Midland, and compared to Odessa and the city of Odessa and city of Midland, and say on a $250,000 house, I think I think it's like 35 or 40. John, I gave you those numbers. It's $35, $40 a month more in Odessa for some reason. And,
Mike, I think we probably have that answer. Cindy, I think you're on the call. Can you talk a little bit about why the difference, and more specifically, the total values in Midland versus the total values in Odessa?
Well, one of the things is I think the values typically are higher than in Midland than they are in Odessa. Odessa does additional exemptions that Midland does not do. Some of the homestead exemptions are a little bit more in Odessa than they are in Midland.
so
Now,
if the homestead exemptions are more in Odessa than they are in Midland, would our taxes not be less in Odessa?
Yes. I mean, the exemptions are greater in Odessa than they are in Midland. So you're saying that you're seeing taxes higher over there
No, ma'am, I'm seeing them higher here than I am in Midland.
on the same value home?
Yes, ma'am. Estimates? Yes,
Is
ma'am.
it city to city?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I didn't know that Midland does get higher sales tax dollars than we do generally, mostly because they have more sales tax generators. And so they probably have their tax rates lower because of their sales tax that they're getting in.
And Cindy, do they not have about $3 to $4 billion more in valuation than we do?
Yes, and they have more mineral property within their city roll than we do. But usually what I'm looking at is just the portion of Midland that's within Ector County. I haven't
Yes,
done a
ma'am.
lot of research on total city of Midland, but I can do some work on that if I need to.
well, the valuations of the homes that are in Midland County that are in the city of Odessa are going to be extremely high. I mean, that's not apples and apples. And I have seen the same that Mike has seen, and is that they're getting more for their dollar in Midland, and that's what people tell me all the time, is they're getting more for their dollar in Midland when they look at homes, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that our mayor has said is he doesn't believe that we should spend money on, value things, and that's kind of, so if we're going to compete, we have to have these impact fees not a little bit lower than Midland, a lot lower than Midland. Don't you agree, Mike?
I do. I guess my concern is that I'm doing closings, and I've done this a long time, and I'm seeing more and more people, believe it or not, leaving the city of Odessa and moving to Midland, Texas, instead of saying we're moving to Greenbrier. We still have that, but people are picking up and moving 20 miles east. And that used to not necessarily be the situation that we have. And it's concerning me. And they'll tell you the taxes are a little bit less over there. I can run some charts, and I know I did some, and I think I sent them to you, John. I can't place them right now.
You did, and I don't have them where I can share them.
Yeah, and what I did is I have a calculator that'll calculate. I can put $250,000, everyone on both sides, and they each get their homestead exemptions and put them in the city of Odessa and the city of Midland, and it comes up with a little bit of a different tax rate. And I think because this discussion came up when we were talking about the bond election that went on in Midland, and I've also done some research, as has John, about the amount of mineral tax money that they generate over there, which is incredible. And I think, to be honest, I think that's probably why their taxes are lower, quite a bit lower, because of the amount of mineral income that they have from over there. And I think that's something we need to explore in Ector County, because I can promise you we have exploration going under the city of Odessa also. No offense, Joe, or any other people that might be in the oil field, but I know there is some of that here.
Okay. Oh, great. Jimmy, you gonna say something, Dr. Goetz?
No, but what I'd like to see from whoever can share it, whether it be Vanessa or Jeff or whoever, our deal for we're doing residential housing, and put it up on the screen, and the numbers that we were comparing with Midland.
Yeah, please bring that slide back up, Jeff.
Is that what we're going to compare
John?
what Midland's charging to what? Okay.
Yes.
You want me to pull that up? I've got
Yes,
it up on.
Please.
I can share. Okay.
Please, John.
We can get the right screen here.
While he's doing that, and I haven't heard anybody in the group really have any issues with the commercial and industrial stuff. So doing that part of the ordinance or recommendation, probably just going to keep it the same as what Midland did, but what we're really talking about amongst our group is the housing portion. Is that fair to say at this point?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
We can.
I see a comparison chart.
Yeah, this is where the charts start. Okay. I'll just revisit with everybody real quick here. This is not what Midland's charging in their service areas. This is the maximum as compared to Odessa's maximum.
But that's a 1 inch compared to a 3/4, correct?
This is 3/4. We changed it based on our conversations.
Right.
You can see highlighted here. This is Odessa's 3/4 to Midland's 1 inch, which is the base meter for each community. So
We'll go to the next slide, which shows 50%. And
so
then go to the next slide, which shows 50% plus 25%.
yeah, and let me give you a nuance a little bit in the math, because what you're looking at here is just the raw fee. Okay. And so as an example, Midland A has a roadway of $1,000-ish. Odessa's got a roadway for service area 1 at $1,363. So remember, when we transition to the next slide, we're multiplying those two values by almost 3. So what you're going to see is a higher effect occur on roadway than in Odessa than you will in Midland. So now as we toggle, see how much the increase in the orange section as compared to Midland. So the nuance I'm trying to tell you here is it can be a little tricky when you look at this because we are looking at single family housing specifically here. The previous slide is just the raw, which I flipped back to just now, is just the raw impact fee. And you go, wow, Odessa looks a lot lower across the board than Midland. Well, what it is Midland's water and sewer fees are a lot higher than Odessa's. And then Odessa's roadway raw numbers are higher than Midland. So when you go to the calculation of single family, there's a factor that's part of the equation that for trip length for single family housing is almost 3. So you have to multiply that raw number by 3. And so because Midland's roadway impact fee is higher, you see that bigger jump in the fee that now puts the values kind of across the board a little bit more comparable, where the raw number looks much lower. Is everybody following the math there? I'm just trying to explain the math. I'm not trying to give any kind of opinion. There's a nuance that's happened there in the mathematics that's in the background.
Well, this is what I was talking about, John, with when Michael said we were a little bit lower. This shows that we're just a little bit lower if we did this exactly the same. And that's why when I came up with the last time, let's just come up with a number, put a number in here that, you know, like Odessa 1 put $3,000, Odessa 2 put $2,000, Odessa 3 put $3,000, and go with it like that. Then we know that we're less than Midland, and we can justify that.
And you can do that. That's it. Yeah, you can put specific number. We talk in percentages all the time based on your maximum accessible, but you don't have to do, your recommendation doesn't have to be a percentage, but it can be a set value for housing, if you will.
And we could say, and it for the CBDG areas, it could just be $1,000 if we want to give an extra discount in that.
I like that, John. John, I like that. That's a great idea.
John, would we still, if we were to do quote that $3,000, would we still be allocating towards a percentage towards water, percentage towards wastewater?
Yeah, there's a nuance in there that we've got to determine what. Let's say you set it at $3,000. You know, right now
I'm on conference call.
You're going to have to. That's going to have to be broken out in 3 components. So as dollars come into the city, they know how that's allocated.
But that could just be a straight formula, right, John?
Yeah.
I mean, just simple arithmetic at that point.
Yes.
If we rounded those off to 3,000, 2,000, 3,000, and then 1,000 for the CBDG.
Yes.
Were all of those in one area, or were they in 2? And I'm thinking none of those were in area 1, or was it?
I just said, Tom, if you were listening, 3,001, 2002, 3003, and then the CDBG would be 1,000, and that's actually in a couple of different districts, or whatever we're calling these things.
Okay, I was just curious what different districts they were in. Okay.
I mean, I can flip back to the map. It's up several slides if you just want to see the areas one more time.
No, that's fine. I
Gotcha.
think we got it memorized.
But to give everybody a breather on housing a minute, John Landgraf, you mentioned, I'm going to call it non-residential, which is basically everything else.
Right.
Does the committee have a feel for those values?
Let's go back to our comparison of the non-residential to Midland. I think we were lower than them. We want to make sure that we are.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking, John, are you talking about jumping to some of the examples of non-residential? Or
yeah, go to the 1 meter versus 1 meter. I think that would be together.
This is the max.
There you are.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, but that's still residential. Go to the non.
Well, this is everything actually.
Okay.
But if we want to look at, I mean, if you want to look at, I'll go to non-residential. Here's a non-residential example.
Yeah, general office.
You got to always remember there's a trip link factor that is a multiplier that makes this roadway component so much higher. And always realize when we go back to the actual raw fees that I showed you on that second slide, remember Midland's raw roadway fees are actually higher than, I mean, Odessa's are actually higher than Midland's. So that's why you're always going to see Midland's appear to all of a sudden jump up and be either at or higher than Midland's. So that's that nuance mathematically I was talking about. So
well, but
Midland doesn't give any discounts for this, right?
I know this is
their
fee.
discount is the 50%. Their discount is the 50% of maximum, correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Yeah. So as you can see, we are higher in 1 and lower in 2 and tiny bit higher in 3 compared to Midland.
Yeah, it's weird because, you know, we are comparing all 3 of Odessa's service areas to all of 4 of Midland's service areas. So there's always variations. It gets a little tricky trying to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, if your goal is to be below across the board, then you end up having to find the lowest common denominator on their end. You know, let's say the 14,656 of area C, and then how do you then set the bar? If your desire is to be lower across the board, then all of a sudden now we're going to be setting a roadway impact fee value in service areas at least 1, and 3 at some lesser value to get to that, which means we'd have to go back up to the other chart of where you have the raw fees against each other and decide what that would need to be mathematically. We start, which is fine. We can get into the weeds all you want. It's not easy to talk about in general terms.
Right. From a political viewpoint, I mean, it's pretty simple. The Odessa 3 is really is comparison to Midland A and Midland D because those are the growing areas of each city.
Correct.
Our west side, which is Odessa 1, is not a growing area, and Odessa 2 is basically a built out area, where the same as B and C in Midland. That's the way I look at it. John, Landgraf, you see that? You agree?
Jimmy, that's exactly right. I mean, we're comparing 3 to A and D.
Right.
As far as
I would say that we have to be a tiny bit lower if we want to compete for certain things. And we already lose because Midlands has a higher per capita income. So when we've got retail coming in, retail almost always looks at Midland first. Correct?
Yes.
Reflect their
Yeah.
retail side. With your retail shopping.
From a retail viewpoint, I would think that we would need to be below them, and I'm not real sure how to say the number, but according to this, we're not.
Yeah,
In the
well,
growing areas, we're not. We're higher than that.
And here's the nuance that you could consider. It would probably be good to maximize your water and sewer fee and lower the roadway raw fee a little bit if you want to be competitive, but still get as much in the door on your water and sewer revenue generating side.
Yeah, I almost, just looking at this chart, most of any development that we're gonna have is gonna be in 3 on the retail shopping. We may get something in 1, and there may be a little bit come in 2, but most of the square footage, Withrow, wouldn't you agree, is gonna be in Odessa 3?
No doubt, no doubt.
And so if we just said, hey, to be competitive with Midland, which is theirs is going to be in the 86 and 87,000 range, we make ours 79,000. And like John Atkins suggests, take that out of the roadway, leave the
Other two the same.
water and sewer, like they are, reduce the roadway, make it 79,000, which psychologically is a noticeable difference lower than Midland. Leave 2 the same at 53. And, I think you're not going to ever generate much money in 1 anyway for that. So go ahead and make it 79,000 also.
I agree with that, John. I think that's a great idea.
Good.
Good idea.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Okay. Somebody make that in form of a motion, and we'll start this piecemeal. John Atkins, we're going to piecemeal your agenda.
Can I ask a
Mr. Chairman?
clarification? Oh, sorry, Michael.
Mr. Chairman, just, I would not be doing my job if I did not state, that doesn't really answer the question. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we have, several $1 million in need, and those are all tied to a dollar amount. The work that was done and the numbers you see are reflective of those dollar amounts needed, that would help, not complete, I get that, but help supplement that, those costs that ultimately will have to come from somewhere. Typically, that's going to be debt in our case. Again, I say that just to make sure that we all are understanding that number doesn't change for us. Someone's going to pay for it, whether we reduce it here or leave it the same.
Well, but Michael, the way you said that, I think you're forgetting this is new money. So $1 is new money. Any of it is going to be new money that we don't have. This is another tool in the toolbox. We've got to use all the same tools in the toolbox we have been. We've just got a new one. And we're trying to figure out the best way to do it the most competitive way, in my mind.
And that's certainly.
Yeah, John, I agree, John, because Michael, unless you're going backwards, we got to go forward. And if we're above Midland and we can't compete with Midland, then the dollars aren't going to be here.
But Mike, aren't those numbers that we saw, aren't they competitive already with Midland? If we stay with the percentage?
I think in certain areas we're very competitive, Mr. Gonzalez. I think what the gentlemen are referring to, if you look at the chart that's current, and it sounds like you're on your phone, so you may not be able to see, but they're currently discussing the chart that looks at retail shopping centers, and in some areas we are significantly higher than Midland. I think that's what they're contemplating, is whether or not we drop that even below that. my question or my position is that that dollar need is still there, whether we drop it or not.
Yes.
But I think I'm terrified, just to be blunt, I am terrified that if we're at or above Midland, we're not gonna get any of those dollars.
Yeah, Midland's, will
They're
keep
all
getting
gonna
more
go
and
to
more.
Midland.
Mr. Chairman, I understand your viewpoint, sir.
Well, historically, we've always kind of had to fight for the retail when Home Depot came in here and Sam's. We've had other ones trying to come in here, and it's always been an issue that, you know, they look at it and say, "Oh no, we're going to Midland because of, I guess, the difference in the demographics," and that makes it difficult. And I think if what John's saying, if we don't throw a little bit of a advantage out there in some way, we may lose out in even more situations. Isn't that what you're trying to say, John?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I agree 100% because I've watched it from where I am, and the fact that as much as we try to compete and try to draw these people in, they jump over to Midland first. And honestly, even our Home Depot at one point in time, they built in Midland and nearly didn't build over here. And, you know, they find out eventually that probably Odessa is better, but it's just they look at numbers and crunch numbers.
Hey, Mike, John, the three of us have kind of dominated the conversation. I'd like to hear from Richard or Joe as to what they think about this part of it, the shopping center type part of it.
This part, okay, I'll go. I agree. I think that number 3, Odessa 3, should be just a little under 80,000. And keep number 2 the same. I don't know about dropping number 1 all the way down to the same, but people in West Odessa, they want development too, so.
Well, number one, the western part of Odessa.
North and west.
Yes.
John Atkins, can you bring up the map with the areas?
Sure,
Hey, Joe, I think that'd be northwest.
right there. Can y'all see that? The green area?
Okay,
Area one.
got it.
Sorry, it's not. It's a little small, I'm sure, on the screen.
Joe recognizes.
Joe, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Well, I'll make that.
I don't think we're gonna see a lot of retail development or offices or anything like that in that area anyway. Do you? Does anybody?
I don't believe so, but let's make it the same as like 79 to just under 80.
I don't think it's gonna make us much difference if we drop it down, is what I'm saying.
Oh, you don't think it'll make
Yeah.
a difference?
Yeah, no, I think if we could drop it down, maybe we could, you know.
Yeah. He's agreeing with you, Richard. He's agreeing
I'm
with you.
agreeing with
Oh,
you.
okay.
Let's make that a motion. Let's make that a motion, John.
Okay, restate your motion, Dr. Goetz.
I'm agreeing with what everybody's saying. Let's drop 1 and 3 to 79 and
Leave
keep
2.
2 as it is.
Okay.
Can we add to that in the fact that we leave the wastewater and the water the same, and any adjustments to get to the 79 will come out of the roadways?
I'd like to see
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take that as Vanessa. That's a motion, all in one with that amendment. So just make that one motion, please. Everybody is there a second to that?
Second.
Joe Hurt, second.
John, just real quick I just have a question.
Okay,
What we're doing the motion for right now, that's what we're going to present we're agreeing to present what we just discussed to the city council. Is that what we're making a motion for?
yes, that's correct. This is our recommendation. This is one piece of our recommendation. And this is for the retail shopping centers.
Oh, okay. I'm caught up. I'm sorry about that. Okay, I'm in.
For a 10,000 foot. So what 100,000 foot would be, it would go through the mathematics, but we're using this example. And then everything will be based on that.
I'm good. I'm caught up. Yes, sir.
Okay. Everybody understand the motion?
I got one more question, John. I'm sorry.
No problem. That's what I'm asking.
Would this fall under the same and 1 year exemption that has to be done by state? Jeff, that may be a question to you. It does?
Yes.
It does? Okay, John. All right. Thank you.
And I think we can come back and address that, whether we want that to extend that to 2 years.
Right.
Or existing plats or whatever. Let's address that separately.
Okay.
As part of our overall. Okay, any other discussion on the retail shopping impact fee recommendation? Hearing none, all in favor, aye? Any opposed? Okay. Let's see, John, let's go to the next piece that was the non-residential,
Okay.
the light industrial.
John, let me clarify something here.
Okay,
And Jeff, you can tell me if you remember off the top of your head. There is a significant amount, we picked 3 non-residential land use type examples to show illustrations. What we understand the intent that y'all have just provided, talking about retail. There are quite a few other non-residential land use types out there. We're talking very specific. I'm assuming, and I'm not quite sure how I think Kimley Horn can formulate the intent of what y'all are trying to do here. But I don't think the intent is to walk through every land use type that's in the table in the report and give a recommendation.
Can we do it as far as a percentage of what we did on retail and apply that percentage to every single one of the land use?
I
Right.
think that's basically, how it says 50% of max? What we're talking about here, if you want to be able to apply this same methodology across the board.
We did roughly 10% decrease on everything.
Yeah, it's
I wrote
basically,
down 90% of Midlands for service.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, I mean, if we're going to use a percentage, then it's a greater value for water and sewer, and we take it out of
Correct.
roadway. So there's actually the percentage of water and sewer probably is, and we'll have to get back to this in a minute, will be higher than roadway would be lower. And we can
We'd
do it
take
by
it.
service area.
So like on number 3, and what you're saying is say it's 10%, we'd take out roughly 21 grand.
Right.
And that 21 grand would predominantly come out of roadway.
Yep. And you would be just below Midlands area A and D. And you can kind of apply that across all non-residential land use types.
Okay, I think I will accept that as a motion so we can then go to 90%.
Well, I think, John, the only thing is we've got to be careful in that the fact, if you look at this particular one we're looking at, Odessa 1, if you do 90%, that's only going to be 27%, $27,000 reduction roughly. You're still going to be.
That's not what we did on the other, remember?
Right, so we want to stay uniform across the board, so we're going to have to be careful how we do that 90%. Correct, John?
What we'd say, Mike, is that.
I got you. You're going to do the percentages accordingly. I got you.
And 1 and 3 would be the same.
I
make
got you.
1 and 3 the same.
There you go. That's perfect.
Okay,
Just for everyone's sake, when you actually see the ordinance, the percentages won't really show up. It'll be
Right.
a dollar amount. So we'll be backing into the math to make all those percentages work out with the instructions that y'all give to us. So you'll see
Outstanding.
the actual dollar amount.
Outstanding.
Right, exactly, correct. Can, Withrow, you gonna make that a motion?
I'm not even good at making those motions. I'm just a rambler.
I'll make it a motion. I've been quiet.
Okay. All right, do I hear a second?
Hey, John, just real quick before we move forward, for clarification purposes on our end, the motion is to make Odessa Area 1 and Area 3 the same amount?
Yes,
Leaving
That's
Odessa
correct.
Area
With
2
any
the-
possible reductions coming out of the roadway.
and using the same methodology that we did with the retail shopping as far as the percentage of reduction.
that's correct.
Correct. That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great motion.
And I'll
Yeah.
second it.
Okay, Joe seconded Vanessa's, I'm teasing, I know that's not.
No.
All right, any other discussion on that? And then we'll see, John Atkins, if y'all will do the arithmetic and then send that to us.
Right.
And then we can all look at it and we can tweak it if we have to, but we've got
Let-
to come forward with a recommendation, so. Okay, any other discussion?
I think the same point, you can see how all the non-residential carries that same,
Same percentage lines and stuff.
you see the same kind of percentages between Odessa's Area 1 and 3 as compared to Midland A and B.
Yeah, and Odessa 3, 90% of that is 18,000, so that gets us below Midland.
Right.
And they're A and D, and then 2
Right.
stays the same, and then 1 goes to 18,000, and it all comes out of roadway so that we keep our water and sewer equal.
Correct.
Very
Okay,
good.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, now let's go to the hard one.
Okay, John, can I,
Certainly, John.
let me ask you a nuance in this calculation when we get ready to do it. This is the raw, I'm jumping back again on you a little bit
Okay,
to get some guidance from you all. This is the raw, this is Midland's raw impact fees at 50% reduction. Okay,
okay.
what's a, well, let me jump up here. Sorry to jump around a little bit. Here's the raw fees. And the reason I moved is because this is the 3/4 inch meter one. So it's not. This is at 50% of what you could charge for both roadway, water, and sewer. We're going to take the reduction right now that we talked about out of roadway. Do we keep the math at 50% on water and sewer also, or do you want to, and I'm going to flip up a slide, completely maximize water and sewer and take all of the value out of roadway? Or do you want to reduce water and sewer by 50% and then take the rest also?
I think I'm going to defer my idea. Excuse me, Richard, go ahead. I was going to say, I think that's a staff question, so I'd ask Mr. Kerr for his input on that. It's going to be dollars and dollars. I mean, we've got another source of, we've got a water and sewer fund that's dedicated to water and sewer. We've got, we have to go to bonds or general obligations or other areas for the roadway stuff. So I don't know which is best. And I don't think we really care. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I think the staff's needs are the more important on how that gets
Allocated.
distributed.
Yeah, I think Michael should make this decision.
Yeah, with input from his technical people.
Yeah, I mean, the staff can give the recommendation on that side of it, and then y'all can then approve or.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, the maximum. We might want to charge maximum for water and sewer, and all that does is just further reduce the roadway amount.
Yeah, and I'm not favoring one or the other. I'm just telling you that's an option.
Committee.
That's why Lubbock took it all out and put it in roads, because that's where their problem was. Michael, you might feel totally different, and I want to hear your.
Well, Jimmy, I will say that we need money in all categories. I mean, we struggle as much with on the general fund side as we do on the water and sewer side. I think certainly if that is the desire of the committee, as staff, we'll certainly look at it, and we'll direct John and Jeff in April on the most appropriate areas based on what we think is going to be overall the best for the city. But again, we need it all, but certainly, again, if that's the direction, we can certainly discuss that and give our recommendation on it.
Okay.
Anybody on the committee have any thoughts or care about which way that goes? I think my most important challenge is just setting the top numbers and then let the distribution go where it's most needed.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
All right, John, with that being said, I will scroll back down to your single family stuff if you'd like me to grab one. Okay,
I'm going to ask a nuance while John's scrolling, because when you pull a building permit for like multifamily, it often comes up as commercial. Is this group considering multifamily under the residential discussion or under the commercial philosophy we just discussed?
Commercial.
Okay.
Let me be sure I've got the right. Okay, here.
Multifamily or apartments, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. The single family that we're talking about here is single family detached houses, which are conventional single houses, duplexes, and townhouses will be under this 3/4 inch meter discussion that we're soon to have. Correct, Jeff?
Okay.
John?
Yeah, that's correct. If when you actually look at our ordinance we put together, you'll notice there's some uniquenesses. There'll be a single family detached category, and then multifamily low rise, which is duplexes and townhomes. So you'll see the term multifamily, but the low rise is, we could change the name to duplexes and townhomes if that's less confusing for everyone. But that's kind of the default ITE terminology, but we can change the name to make sure it's not confusing.
Right.
I think that would be helpful, Jeff.
Okay. So when you see the report, it might still say multifamily low rise, but in the ordinance, we can make sure that that's clear.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, Jeff. Question. Say a developer enters into a contract to sell X amount of lots, and this thing gets grandfathered for 1 year, and X amount of lots don't get online until after that 1 year, even though the plat's recorded, and those contracts are already built in, and that developer would not be able to basically receive their pro rata back. Can somebody, John Landgraf, you might need to explain that to me, or someone explain that to me, how that would work.
I'd like Jeff or John Atkins to explain it, because they've seen more examples of that, I'm sure, on things that have been enacted.
Yeah, Mike, you're right. The transition period is kind of the hard time because, depending on what we discussed with the grace period, state law requires if a lot is, if a subdivision is preliminary, it's platted already, final platted, he gets a year grace period. So when that year is up, the impact fee is actually paid at building permit. So the developer of the lots won't be paying the fee at that time. It would be the builder because it's paid at building permit.
Okay, so I know that the builder pays some expenses for putting in some of these items like streets and things like that. So, and we've talked about the house, you know, the credits that the developer may, or that the developer may get back. How would they be able to ever recover or get that money that they paid out through the credits? Or can they not?
In most cities, the way they do it is there's value in the roads that they built, and there's values in those credits. So it's a lot of times built into the value of the lot when they're selling the lot. That's how it
Okay.
happens in most cities.
Okay, but the dilemma I'm struggling with, and I'm in the title insurance business, and we do deals where we have option contracts and things like that. And those prices on those lots are pretty much set, say, on today's numbers. And then they may not be in place, and you lose your 1 year exemption period in there. And you can't really go up and say we come up with a $2,000 additional fee. You really can't go up on that lot credit, I guess. I guess I just need someone to, because these are questions that I'm going to get asked, I can promise you. And I think John may have already been asked some of these questions. Correct, John?
Yes, and certainly this does not, a complication doesn't necessarily apply to developer builders, which we have 2 outstanding ones here, but it's to the developer that develops lots and then sells those to a myriad of home builders, and how we transfer that. And I know Jeff and John Atkins, y'all have referenced that there are developer agreements that are done to take care of that with the city. We sure need to see some of those examples, because I've been asked that question. Mike Withrow, I know, has. Philly was at a meeting with a large developer with us the other day. He was asked that question, and we just said there are developer agreements that can transfer that, but we need to help them understand how that works.
Yeah, John, I think there's probably 2 situations that occur. One is the developer who develops the subdivision does not build any arterial roadways or thoroughfare roadways or system infrastructure, as we like to say. In that case, when they sell the lot, the builder comes in, they're paid the impact fee, and there's really no loss there. The situation I think you're referring to is a developer has built an arterial or built some system infrastructure that
Right.
there's, in theory, credits out there. How do they potentially get those credits back?
That's correct.
And that's the second situation. Most cities I work with, obviously there's a transition period. There ends up becoming, you know, a lot of the lot prices. There are a few cities out there. What happens is the developer gets the agreement with the city that there's credits out there. And in a lot of times he will show in his lot price, like, hey, you have this agreement credit for, I can't remember the number we said, say $3,000 in service area 3, and you're going to get that $3,000 back. So he's basically charging for that in the lot price. And then they'll get credit back later because they're not paying it, if you will. I think there's always a transition area where what if they build something now, what happens then, et cetera. But most of the time the city filters the agreement to give those credits, but the transaction between the developer and the builder happens privately, if that makes sense.
You know, there's another way that, and this is probably less palatable to the city, but they could just go ahead and do their normal reimbursement for over-width paving, normal reimbursement for oversized water and sewer. Then there is then the developer's completely out of the impact fee business, and then the city charges the impact fees as the building permits are issued. So it's kind of a cash, it would be a cash flow issue, and may be more complicated, but that way the developer would be out and not have any credits and not have anything that he's trying to pass along. Michael probably doesn't like that, or Tom.
Yeah, I still need the money first, John.
Well, don't worry, sales tax are going to be up starting about September and October. So
If there was a improvements agreement that's written in a way that the amount of money that, quote, you're saying the oversized road fee would be charged, and so when, say, a builder comes in and pays that impact fee, could that money be directed back to the developer? And I mean, I'm just trying, because my concern, and Michael, you know what we're talking about in those situations in certain areas.
Mhm.
And I don't know how those particular developers would be able to recover that money, because they're going to have a contract X amount of dollars with a builder for maybe 200 lots. And those lots may get taken down, and they're not going to be able to ever recover that additional overage fees.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Mike. Is there some way that to do that by instrument upon sale or transfer from the developer to the builder?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, if it would, because you'd have to almost amend the contracts, and that's not always easy in those situations. But if we come up with an impact fee figure, could that impact fee not be part of the improvements agreement that would be reimbursed back to the developer as the impact fees are paid, to where it covers the city's obligation for the oversized roads or whatever? Does that make sense at all, John?
I didn't follow you all the way on that, Mike.
Well, what I'm trying to do is, say you got a $3,000 impact fee that's going to be paid to the city, but the city hasn't had to pay any obligation for their, say, the middle of the road that they're supposed to pay. But we've gone past our grandfather clause. Could the improvements agreements that we do presently be amended to where that impact fee is applied back to the developer? The impact fee that is paid by the builder to the city gets credited back to the builder, because the builder's not going to be able to adjust their sales price on their lots. You know, we're all talking about the builder can increase their lot purchase price, but when you have these option contracts on a number of lots, you may not ever be able to increase your sales price, and so you may be out, we'll say, $1 million. The builder might be, or the developer, excuse me.
Developer.
Yeah.
Yeah, the credit, you're trying to get the builder of the home then pays that 3,000 back to the developer.
Somehow, because it's, say the sales price of that lot is $40,000, and the impact fee credit would be $3,000. You'd really think, well, the builder can go up to $43,000. But on some of these prices of these lots are going to be tied in previously, and therefore the impact fee gets paid to the city. Does the city have the right to pass that credit back to be applied for the overages on the roads that the city normally would have obligation for, like what John was saying, that the city would normally pay up front?
And I'll say this: there are a few cities that do exactly what you're talking about. They do their oversized participation through, I guess, what you were trying to, like, an infrastructure reimbursement agreement.
Exactly.
It's a little bit of a risk on the. It's a little bit of administrative headache on the city side, because they have to track the fees that are coming in and reimburse the developer. And on the developer side, it is obviously a risk, because their reimbursement is tied to fees that would be paid. So it's a little bit of risk and a headache on both sides, but that is a possible way that could occur. The ordinance isn't changing. So like, the impact fees gives a tool for the oversized participation, whether that comes as a reimbursement or something other than that would have to be explored. And I think that's why we're defaulting to an agreement, because I think it could potentially change on how that occurs, potentially on a development by development basis, like how that chooses to happen through some sort of 380 or development agreement.
Michael, could our committee challenge you and Tom and Vanessa to maybe draft certainly work with Jeff and John and their expertise in other cities, but come up with what a draft of that development agreement might look like? Because I know when we go to that public hearing that we're getting ready to have, that is going to be a huge topic of discussion, because that's the thing that I keep hearing the most about, quite frankly.
John, I think what we can do is certainly explore, because I'd like to look at it as someone mentioned from an administrative kind of workload, what that might be on us. But
Right.
certainly we can look at that, and we can look at what other cities have done to address that very issue. Yes, sir.
Okay. Committee, is it okay if we just ask Michael and his staff and Kimley Horn to bring us some ideas on that in written form for our next meeting? Everybody good with that? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
I'm fine with that.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And
Yep. Hey, Mr. Chairman, I just want to get something clear in my mind. So you guys have every intention or expectation of another meeting because you're asking us for additional information, correct?
Let me answer that. I think the answer is yes, but we want to give, by the end of the meeting today, our recommendation to go forward with the recommendation to council. Council then has to call a public hearing to discuss that, correct? Yes.
Once they have your recommendation, yes, sir.
Yes, and maybe at that public hearings when we talk about that, because we're going to all get asked about how that gets transferred at that meeting or any other meeting that we have.
So we can anticipate, certainly we'll get it to you as soon as we develop it, Mr. Chairman, but the discussion would happen in your mind at the council meeting. And the reason I ask that is that Kimley Horn and we weren't anticipating another meeting, and I'm certain John and his team aren't going to do it for free. So I just want to make sure.
Well, hey, Michael,
Yes, sir.
can I ask a question? Because to me, this is what John is talking about is outside of the purview of this committee. This committee, we're just supposed to give. That's, to me, is a city thing, and we don't have to have another meeting on it. It just has to happen.
Okay, no, that's fair, Jimmy.
Yeah,
That's a good observation.
Yeah,
If we made a recommendation that addresses the handling of those, reimbursements or oversized roads or whatever, is that what you're thinking, Jimmy?
Well, Dr. Goetz
Yeah,
and
I mean, that's-
Mr. Withrow, if I can just interject here, I think, Dr. Goetz, you're correct as far as this being outside the purview. I think statutorily we're required to give a credit. So what that mechanism is to give the credit, we can definitely explore and share with you guys.
Perfect.
But, as far as statutorily required, we have to give the credit for anything that the developer builds.
okay.
Right. Vanessa, you
guess-
said it much better than I did.
Real good. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Vanessa and Jimmy both said it better than I did. I think staff just needs to be prepared, because you're going to get hammered with that question at the public hearing.
Okay.
So being able to answer that's okay. All right. I'm sorry. I'm running down the wrong rabbit trail, I guess. I apologize.
Well, I started it, John. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Okay, let's go back now to the single family. I think we understand where we are on everything but this. Mike, you had some,
Now, I'm on a setback on this one. Y'all can discuss this one.
I'll go ahead and make a motion, John. We do.
okay,
Odessa 1, 3,000, Odessa 2, 2,000, Odessa 3, 3,000, and a $1,000 to all the CDBG areas.
okay. And then, same proportionate, we keep the water and sewer, take it out of, the roadway and
Take it
then,
out of the roadway. Yeah.
Hey, Jimmy, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So what you guys discussed is, and I get it, you guys want to be competitive, you want to be lower in Midland. The numbers that you were proposing are numbers that you think would increase the amount of development in Odessa. If I could ask Mr. Barry, who's a builder and a pretty big builder here locally, Chris, would these numbers tend to have an impact on your company? Is that to say, rather, let me rephrase that. Given that we have considerably lower impact fees, would your company build more or less houses in Odessa than Midland?
That's a good question, Michael. You know, in this initial round of impact fees, I'm just from Beaton Boat's perspective, I'm still not in favor of just a little bit less than max. I like a percentage for what we do. I liked how Lubbock and Midland has done a 25% credit on single family. And that to us has kind of limited the initial impact of impact fees. No pun intended there, but that's kind of helped soften the impact fee assessment for us in all these regions. And if I'm honest and transparent, you know, with the market right now, I mean, we've seen growth in both areas. When you're comparing Midland and Odessa, we are building more in Odessa right now. We're pretty close to 10 starts a week in Odessa. And that's just because we can be a little bit more affordable in Odessa than we can in Midland, from materials, land, all that. And I want to keep Odessa that way. I want to be the most affordable option in Odessa when comparing Midland and Odessa.
Gentlemen, does that change your calculation? Having heard that from Chris, that he is already competitive, as a matter of fact, can build cheaper in Odessa than he can in Midland?
Hey, Chris, are you paying impact fees in Midland right now?
I am. You know, one little nuance to that is we had just built that big project with the city of Midland Fairgrounds, and that was a $5 million project. So, you know, we had a good portion of that impact fee get assessed to offsets or credits. So the only impact fee I'm technically paying is, I think, wastewater, and it's close to $500. I forget the exact number. But we have been paying a small impact fee for our community and Lone Star Trails too, but it's strictly due to some luck of the timing for that fairgrounds project.
but Chris,
Well, Chris, I don't really understand that because I mean, we're talking about 50% of maximum with the 25% housing credit. We're going to be lower all the way across than, and I'm going to make a motion in a few minutes for us to have a 2-year window. So how is that not cheaper? I don't understand that.
Say that one more time, Jimmy.
Well, with the motion that we have, we're comparing to 50% of maximum with the 25% housing credit to Midland right now. That's what we're comparing. So how is that going to be different? And we're going to have I'm going to propose a 2-year window.
So when you look at the impact fees, and I'm looking at the chart that's up on there, that max impact fee is $3,900 for the service area that we're in over in Ratliff Ridge, which is by North Park. If that's $3,000, you know, I'm still having to pay $3,000. Add that to my home, and I know
but you're paying $4,100 in Midland.
No, he's not. He's getting all of his development credits, correct, Chris?
Yeah, but the
That's correct.
credits are based on go
No.
towards paying down the 4,100.
I don't think that's what's happening. Is that right, Chris? Tell us.
Well, so we had started that project and had a development agreement before the impact fees in Midland. So we had already committed to that agreement with the city of Midland, and then we were able to use that portion that we paid for credits or offsets.
Okay.
So it was like we basically got our plat in, and we were able to get through most of Lone Star trails and not have to pay a roadway impact fee. It's a little bit of a really unique situation.
So is that for a 2-year period or a 1-year period, or what is that, Chris?
The credits in Midland?
Yeah, I mean, so once you've got this subdivision platted, are you saying that credit's good for that entire subdivision forever?
The credits are good until I exhaust my credit limit. So I had to go back and look at the exact numbers. And for our particular situation in that project, I do not have enough home sites to spread all my credits out. So I'm going to lose some of my credits because I just run out of home sites to spread it.
Okay, let me ask it a different way then. On your next subdivision in Midland,
That's a good
You're-
question.
you're going to pay $4,100 impact fee, whether it's through credit or directly at building permit time. And what we're saying is we want, where you are in Odessa 1, Dr. Goetz has made a motion that be $3,000. So you'd be $1,136 better off in Odessa.
To answer your question, apples to apples, yes, that will definitely help.
Right.
I'm still gonna present a little bit different on our public speaking portion when we have the city council meeting, but I don't necessarily need to get into that with y'all. I mean, my stance is going to be the same as it was at the stakeholder meeting.
Which is, and I agree, it's going to say 0 impact fees. And Michael, to answer your question, Michael, it doesn't really change my mind because Chris doesn't want any, and I don't disagree with it.
No, I just
I'll still stay with my motion. I also include a 2-year window.
Hey,
when you say 2-year window, Mr. Goetz, are you talking a 2-year grandfather window?
Yes.
Wait.
Statutory, you have to do 1 year.
You mean a 2-year grace period before the implementation?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so Philberto, I think I understand this. So you're saying if a subdivision platted, and only 100 lots are sold and there's 200 in there after 3 years, they're going to then pay an impact fee. Correct?
What's left? That's, I think, what I mean.
Is that right?
Y'all are talking about basically extending it from the 1-year statutory rule to a 2-year rule.
Right. So any lots that are not sold in that subdivision after 2 years will then be subject to a impact fee. They will not be grandfathered by the fact that the plat was filed prior to us implementing an impact fee. They'll only be exempt for 2 years.
Mike, let's be careful. I don't think it has anything to do with
I'm not saying that. I'm asking that question.
It doesn't have anything to do with the sale of the lot. It's at the issuance of the building permit. So you got to be careful.
Okay. So,
Mike, I think you're correct in what you're saying.
So if there's no building permit issued within 2 years on, say, 10 lots that are in one particular subdivision, even though the plat was filed in 2021, in 2023, another builder comes in and gets a building permit, he would then be subject to the impact fees if we've gone past that 2-year period. And it would not be the fact that that subdivision is exempt from impact fees, period, because it was put in prior to the whole thing. Is that correct? Is that what you understand, John Landgraf?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me
That's-
add a clarification to that, just so everyone's on transparent page, and Chris might bring this up too. I heard a little bit about subdivision. It's done by final plat, so I think that's usually really important to understand. Is some subdivisions don't final plat everything up front, so everything's tracked by final plat. So the grace periods just want to make sure the terminology was there, that's tracked at that stage.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
what
Je-
about
Jeff,
what about a replat of a final plat and where they increase lots?
If you replat to increase lots, I would consider that a new plat. Typically,
Yep.
when we say
Yep.
that you're changing the land use, that's that. Now, if it was a replat to add a easement or something that was missed or something like that, a right of way dedication, I think that's different than changing the lots.
well, let's define this grace period and
Yep.
is it on the lots when the lot is final platted? Or when the building permit, I mean, if we do a subdivision, and I'm just gonna make up round numbers, and Chris is gonna think I'm crazy, but if you did 500 lots, got it final platted, and you only sold 200 of them in the next 2 years, even though that plat was done in 2021, but the building permits weren't pulled till 23, 24, and 25.
They're going to be subject to impact fees.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure, because that's different than saying when it was final platted, it's exempt.
Right. So any lots that are not sold within a new subdivision plat after 2 years will be subject to impact fees when the builder gets a building permit, by what we're discussing right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, after the grace period's over, whatever that grace period is,
Right.
they're subject. You stop having to worry about the grace period. You just have to worry about credits, if you will. So
Okay. All right. We have a motion. Oh, John Atkins, do you need to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, a caveat to this, between what you're talking about is a unique time period between what's been discussed here is my understanding. What you're saying is, let's assume, and I'll make up a date just for example purposes. Let's assume the ordinance is passed July 1 of 2021. Y'all are talking about, my understanding is any subdivisions or what that are platted between now and July 1, and anything platted after July 1 immediately
Going to have them immediately.
will have impact fees immediately. Is everybody on the same page there?
That's what I'm understanding.
Yes, that's
That's
correct.
what I'm, so what I'm talking about is a subdivision that is, we'll say, one that's existing right now.
Correct.
That lots have not been sold. They have a 2-year exemption on impact fees. If a plat gets filed in January, boom, they're subject to them immediately. So we got to consider that when we're talking about this, because we do have some new subdivisions that are out there. Now, that's why I'm asking about a replat. If you've got a subdivision that has 30 lots in it that's existing right now, just did one on a particular subdivision, they've since replatted it. And say the replat's after our ordinance date. How do we address that, John? Both Johns. Do we address that as an exemption, or is it considered a new plat and it becomes subject to replat impact fees?
I think it goes to what Jeff mentioned a minute ago. There's a nuance there. If it's replatted because you increase the lot density. I think that's one thing versus, let's say, a new easement was put on the track and the lot density didn't change.
What if you reduce the density? Say you go from 25-foot lots to 50-foot lots.
Same thing. It just actually it'd be less, less.
So you're going
number
to
of-
then have impact fees on a replat.
Yeah. In that case, yeah.
John Landgraf, I know you understand that. You think everybody else does?
Mr. Gold, I have a question, and reason being is the city, in a way, is looking at this for a reason to raise funds, and I just don't understand the purpose of waiting 2 years. Why are we given a 2-year grace period? Can anybody kind of give me an idea about that?
Midland's doing that right now, is my understanding, right, Chris?
Yeah, they had a grace period, statutorily, you, if your final plat's filed, like Jeff spoke about earlier, the state mandates that you have a year grace period. What Midland did was they added a year after that. So for a total of 2 years, if your final plat is filed before the effective date of the ordinance, then you have 2 years. What they did in Lubbock was after the approval of the city council of the ordinance, they did a 6-month from the city council approval to the effective date, then that state mandatory 1 year. And from a developer's perspective, that was a little easier because that gave me time to finish anything up in that was getting civil approvals and finish stuff up that was getting done out in the field to go file your plat.
Yeah, what Chris just talked about was a delay in the effective date. So that's another nuance in here. Do y'all understand what he's saying there?
Yeah, Odessa passed it on July 1st, like you said, but make the effective date January 1st, 2022.
Right.
Then then there would be a year from that time under the statutory requirements before you would
You could.
on any plat that was filed.
Right. That's another little nuance in that you could do.
So a year and a half, almost.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And Philly, I think what you're saying is, yeah, that's going to really affect the amount of impact fees that the city would allow. So maybe I'm looking at it wrong. I think that's something we have to look at is, are we going to lose some competitive edge with Midland not putting theirs in place for 2 years if we were to put ours in place, say, in a year?
Yeah.
Well, Mike, I would add to that we're already a little behind, obviously, almost 2 years behind Midland at this point when it comes to impact fees.
Right.
And any time beyond the mandatory, just quite frankly, just makes it's longer for us to wait to get dollars in to be able to do future projects.
We have a motion on the floor. Dr. Goetz, would you, since we've had so much discussion, restate your motion and then we'll vote on it?
That we set our fees at Odessa 1, 3,000, Odessa 2, 2,000, Odessa 3, 3,000, 1,000 for all the CDBG funded areas. And Mike, if you want to change that, you can, but I think the window at 2 years is pretty good.
Oh, I'm fine with that. I think, again, we've got to stay competitive with Midland, and I know it just puts the city in a tighter spot, but I think if we change that window, you're going to see more people go towards Midland, and because they're not going to have the impact fees for another year and a half or 2 years. Is that right, Chris? Am I saying the right thing, Chris?
I think you are, one thing from our perspective is we kind of missed that final plat because they were effective immediately. So, the way Midland does their final plat inspections and acceptance is a little bit different than Odessa. And I think that's one thing that makes it a little bit easier to file your plat is the way the city handles that. But, you know, today's May, and if it passes at the end of June, that still doesn't give developers a lot of time to go make sure their civil plans are approved and their plats are filed.
Right. Well, we still have to all realize that city council just got to be discussed by them also.
Sure.
Okay, we've got a motion. Is there a second to Dr. Goetz's motion? Withrow, raise your hand. Second.
I'll second it.
All right. I thought you were when you raised your hand. I'm sorry.
Well, I thought Joe was going to jump out there in second.
Hey, John, before you guys vote, I know there was discussion about keeping the competitive edge on Midland as far as when the implementation of impact fees occurs. Jeff, maybe you can just confirm. It looks like they passed their ordinance in August of 2019, so their 2-year period is up in August of this year. So Midland will be implementing their impact fees after August of this year. Is that correct?
I mean, they're starting on some of them because they've had plats. As Chris mentioned a second ago, they've made it effective. All the new plats have already been going, and that only the tier grace period only applied to single family townhome and duplexes. So they've been implementing the commercial stuff for the last year.
Okay.
So would we want to mirror that? I know that takes out townhomes and single families, and that gives it 2 years, but all the other stuff, Jimmy, are you looking at 2 years at that as well, or similar to what Midland has done?
No, I'm only talking about single family detached housing,
Okay.
et cetera, but not the other. We didn't put a anything different than what the state makes us do. Isn't that right, John? That was the way.
That's the way I understand it too. Thank you for clarifying that for us, Vanessa. Yes, that was our intent. Is that grace periods only applies to the single family detached residential. I'm sorry, not detached, the single family housing.
Yes.
Duplex and townhomes, right, Mr.
Duplex, townhomes, and detached, correct. Okay, we've had a motion, a second, quite a bit of discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Vanessa, is this clear as enough as mud for you to write our recommendation?
Yes.
To go forward to the council?
Yes, I think that I have everything, and now I can work with Kimley Horn to make sure that we calculate the way that you guys have indicated and recommended.
Okay. Jeff or John Atkins, do we need to do anything else? I mean, do y'all have all that you need from us?
Yes.
Okay. Great. That's a lot of work, a lot of input. I appreciate everybody's diligence on this. We had one more item on the agenda, I think. Did we not?
Yes, John, the next item was item number 4, which is authorizing the CIAC chair to submit comments and recommendations to the council regarding the impact fee on behalf of the SEAC. So it's basically the same, what we were proposing was the same methodology that we did with the SEAC's recommendations and comments on the land use assumption and impact fee. Basically what we'll do is we'll take your comments and recommendations from today, we'll put it in the form of a memo, so we will send back to you for your signature, and it just memorializes all the conversation that we had today.
Okay. Do I hear a motion that we authorize me to present what we've just worked on to the city council?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any other discussion?
Karina, can you please come to the front?
So, I'll be the one that gets my
Yes,
head
I
cut
will.
off. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 I can't say that one fast enough, John.
Gee, thanks. All right, any other discussion? And I guess, Vanessa, just for clarification, we'll make that presentation to the council, then it's up to the council to call the public hearings to do with that as they see fit under the guidelines. So our tasks are essentially complete other than answering questions before the council and the public, correct?
Yes, at this time, yes.
Okay,
And John, just to be clear, the council will look at all the information once again. And then obviously they'll look at your recommendation as well.
sure, I understand. And they're subject to whatever modifications they want to make. We're just a
sir.
recommending body.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and any other?
And John, that's what I remember talking to that developer, that, we can do our recommendations, we do our due diligence, which is what I feel that we all did, but they can still change all of it at the end. So
Absolutely,
let's just see what
absolutely.
happens.
I think after Mr. Berry and Mr. Lee kind of wear them out, they may have a different thought process, but we did what we were charged with doing. I'm
Yes, sir.
I'm teasing with you, Chris.
Y'all have done a good job. I appreciate you even including us, and I know y'all have done a lot of work and commitment on this time, and City and Kimley Horn as well. So I appreciate y'all even involving me and asking me.
All right. Any other business need to come before the group? I appreciate everybody's participation and just Richard, I'm glad you're better. I hope you heal up on your burns. And thank you for your input, Dr. Goetz, your leadership. Mike, appreciate you, Philly, and Joe. Thanks for everybody for serving. And
John, can I get a motion to adjourn when you do adjourn, please?
may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'm so moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
See everybody.